Okay, I believe we are live. Thank you everyone for waiting. I know people on the edge of their seats like, what is going on? I can see the comments, but Reggie is here. Just a bit of a communication error. I thought it started at 11:30 instead of 11:20, but you'll still get 30 minutes of his time, so do not worry, do not panic. Reggie, why don't you just go in and introduce yourself? And I always ask people to not be humble in this part. Like, let them know who you are, let them know what you've done, and then we'll go back to being humble and just answering questions.
Okay. Well, that's always a difficult question to answer when you've been working for so many years. I started in television when I was 8 years old, and I just turned 38 this summer. So it's been 30 years of a career that has pivoted through so many different things over the last few decades. And the truth is, I find it very difficult to boil down everything that I've done because it is so many different shows. But what I will say is that over the years, I've been fortunate enough to indulge my passions, and I've really pushed to do different things and to continue to challenge myself. And as a result, I feel as though after 30 years, I mean, it's taken me a long time, I finally found my feet in terms of the best way to express myself. And, I'm an art college kid, and in the foundation course, one of the greatest things that you do is you spend a semester doing a different art discipline. So be that fashion or photography or fine art or whatever. And I always found something that I would love in each single one of those disciplines. And that's essentially the way that my life and my professional career has been. I've always found something that I can really love in the different discipline and literally rode that horse as far as I can.
And that's incredible, right? So let's go back to when you were 8 years old. Could you ever have imagined that you'd have a 30-year career? I know we grow up with so many child stars that kind of fade away or don't have such a long career. What do you feel like kept you going, kept you motivated?
Well, the truth is, I never planned at that age to have a career. I mean, I didn't even really think that far ahead. I was just doing something that was cool and that I was interested in. And, my mother wanted me to get out of the house and find a way to express myself, but not necessarily on the block. I grew up in a working class council estate filled with white working class people and children of immigrants like myself. And as a result, my mother was very protective about where my energy went and where I spent my time, how I spent my time also. So she found a small community drama group called Anna Share in North London. And in sending me there for next to no money per session, I mean, I was still going to my normal school, but also after school and on weekends, I would go to this drama club and express myself. And I was fortunate enough to actually get put up for art auditions and actually get work and start from quite a young age. So, there was never a plan as a child to have a career. I just knew that this was something that I loved and something that I wanted to continue doing. And I think as I got older in my career and as things have sort of progressed over the years, the key has always been knowing when to move on. I've always been very big on understanding myself as best as I can with the tools that I have at that time. And as I've grown and as I've got to know myself better, I believe that my tool belt is much more equipped to know myself as best as possible. And knowing when to move on has really served me well. So I feel that that's a massive reason as to why I've gone from being an actor to a presenter to a radio host to a documentary maker to an entertainment presenter to radio, all these different things I've done over the years, and now ultimately I'm a writer and director making movies, making feature films.
But there's so much to unpack in that, your statement of knowing when to move on. I feel like a lot of people don't know when to move on. Is it intuition or, what are the signs that allow you to know when the next train needs to be catched, basically?
For me, it's always been about when you stop learning. I find if you're not learning anymore, then you can very easily become stagnant and just coast. And that has never been a good feeling for me. When I feel as though I'm not really challenging myself or pushing myself, I know that I need to move on. And that's always been a real sort of fork in the sand in a lot of ways. The minute that things become too easy, I know that I need a challenge. And that's when I pivot and shift and go into something that I find interesting. Truth be told, I've always been driven by my passions. And to be honest with you, I think as time has gone on, not only focusing on something that I'm passionate about, but finding a way to be as authentic as possible in that space has been a key. We live in an era where everybody's talking about authenticity and transparency and all of these buzzwords, but not really many people are living by that. There are still a lot of people that code switch. There are a lot of people that pretend to be someone that they're not, to be either accepted professionally or personally. And I've never subscribed to that. And yes, I do understand I'm in a very fortunate position. I'm in a lane where your individuality is essentially the reason as to why you can become successful. But I don't really believe that that only applies to my business. Everybody that I look up to that doesn't work in the same industry as me, that has had some level of success, is an individual. Be that something academic or, you know, something financial, something in the tech space. The people that really rise to the top have a voice, and it's a unique tone of voice, and that can definitely be that can be placed in any industry or any lane, I feel. And in my industry, it's just a little bit more obvious, because when you're different, it's visual. You know, people really see it and they consume that difference, be that in music, entertainment, sports, or whatever. Whereas in other lanes, I think you can be an individual and stand out for all of the right reasons.
And a lot, again, there's so much to unpack. When you look at your journey, right, you said you've gone from being an actor to director to writer to producer. There must have been people that have helped you along the way, or doors that have opened randomly, or a connection that you've made. What do you think it was that helped you to move through these different lanes?
I think anybody that answers this question with one thing is a liar, because it's not ever one thing. There is no one single reason for success for anybody in any situation. It is a very strange and weird alchemy of lots of different people and lots of opportunities. But ultimately, if I'm going to be really honest, this is the main thing. And that is the one thing that I can control, and that is how hard I work. I'm not going to use that horrendous thing that everybody talks about, you know, luck is opportunity and time and all that nonsense. I just genuinely believe that if you are prepared and if you do work hard, you will never fall down. You know, I've definitely been in situations where somebody has opened a door for me and I wasn't ready to step through it yet, and I didn't. And I'm thankful for those experiences, because timing is everything and God's time is the best. And I really have allowed myself to quote unquote allow certain things to pass me by, knowing that it's not my time yet. And I've never been the kind of person to green eye anybody else's journey or success, because I know that mine is unique to me, and the amount of work and effort that I put in allows me to walk through an open door, and more importantly, recognize when there is an opportunity. And I think that's the thing that's forgotten. If you are doing the work, not only are you ready for the opportunity, but you can recognize it also.
Yes, I'm a believer in hard work. You know, BYP journey has been nothing but hard work. But I also believe in something called cultivated serendipity. And essentially, that's when you create your own luck. So it isn't just luck, it is something that you created. You walked into it. You purposely went to that networking event, you know, or you purposely knew that someone was going to be somewhere and that you should go there so you can meet that person. Have you done things like that in your career to kind of make sure you're intentional with driving it forward?
Yeah, intentional, 1,000,000%, but not necessarily door stopping people to make things happen. I've always believed that you have to work so hard that people can't ignore you. And that's always been my way for it, you know, my way to find some level of success. During lockdown, a lot of people took that time to go inward, find themselves, spend some time with themselves. And I definitely did a bit of that. But I also wrote 13 screenplays, because I'd never had that much time to myself in my entire life. Since the age of 8, I've been a working person, and I've had a calendar, I've had a diary, I've had a schedule, I've had things in. So certain days I can't go out and play because I'm learning lines. During my teens, I can't go to a certain party because I'm in Leeds, Liverpool, or Spain, or wherever, shooting a new project. And to suddenly have a block of time with no cap on it to actually make my own schedule. It was the first time in my life that I had an extended weekend. I worked weekends through my entire teens and my early 20s. So when I finally had that block of time, I invested that time in having so much work that when lockdown was over, no one would be able to ignore me in the field that I'm in. And that is the case. I have my first feature film coming out on the 26th of November, which we shot, and that was stopped by lockdown. But through sheer will, we were able to finish it after lockdown ended. And I knew that before the film was finished, I was sat on screenplays that I could sell the minute that people saw the film that we'd finished. And now we're in a position where the movie's out in November, and we're pretty much already done on the deal for the follow-up. Therefore, I'll be making my next movie next year, with it being released next year. And that's not because anybody told me to do that. It's just because I work hard and I know what I want for myself.
I just want to pause for a minute, because I feel like throughout this conference, we have heard the terminology of working hard. But, you know, this current society that we live in, or the current environment, is all about, you know, make sure you don't work on weekends, you know, well-being, health, mental health, which is all very important. But how do you balance that? What do you think the balance is of, like, you know, you do have to work hard, and maybe you do have to work weekends to get that extra step further, or actually don't, you know, it's not worth it, or it's not that deep. And this has to go towards the topic of progression, you know, in the diaspora. So whatever you kind of answer with this is for us all to progress as a community as well.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all. I think it's entirely personal. The key is knowing your limits. You know, ultimately, everything that I'm going to say to you today comes back to self. And that's not because I'm an egomaniac or a narcissist. It's because I've had to get to know myself. And in getting to know myself, I've been able to carve out a lane that is unlike anyone else. And that's not me, you know, blowing smoke up my own backside. That's me totally understanding that having a niche makes you exceptional. It makes you more valuable. It makes you unique. And for me, this work-life balance thing is something I'm still figuring out and I'm still working on. But my balance is not unhealthy in the way that it once was. I think if you are a hard worker, which I certainly am, and I come from a long line of people that graft, you have to put into your calendar when you stop, and also listen to your body when it's telling you to stop. So I think when you've actually scheduled time to just rest, to just see family, or to decompress in the way that suits you, be that seeing your therapist, seeing your nieces and nephews, or spending time with your children. I find my nieces and nephews being an incredible decompressor for me, because they don't care. They don't care who I am. They don't care what I do. They don't know, recognize any level of authority or whatever. They just want to be themselves, and they're fun and funny to be around. And for me, I lose time when I'm with them. Another thing that I do is I DJ. I started out on pirate radio when I was 17 years old. So mixing records has always been something special for me, but I lose time when I'm mixing records because I'm just in flow. So it's knowing not only when to stop, but how to spend that time and how to get out of your head. And it's entirely personal. I think everybody needs to recognize what it is that works for them. Walking became a huge thing for me during lockdown as well. Just listening to a podcast and just walking and losing myself and finding a way home.
Incredible. So I want to go kind of deeper now into the topic of this talk, which is all again about the progression of the diaspora. And I wanted to focus on something that I read. So you wanted to diversify your stories. So you moved into documentaries. So tell us what happened there. What made you dictate that side of your careers, and then about the documentaries that you decided to create.
Yeah, so I was in entertainment at the time, and I was hosting The Voice on BBC One, you know, a successful Saturday night television presenter, earning well, being paid to wear great suits and having a fantastic time. But ultimately, I was not fulfilled. And I was juggling entertainment with making documentaries, and I just started. So the first documentary that I'd ever made was a series of 3 films for Comic Relief in Kibera, which is a slum in Kenya, where I went and lived there for a week with several other people. And the feeling that I got from that experience was unlike anything I was getting when I was on the shiny floor, as we call it, you know, in the spotlight holding the microphone. It didn't feel the same. Suddenly everything else paled in comparison, and everything else felt really surface and unsatisfying in a lot of ways. So I was actually encouraged to make more documentaries, and I didn't think that I was right for it, because unfortunately I subscribed to I subscribed to not being able to be something because I couldn't see it. And I'm really glad that I had an amazing mentor at the time who told me that I could do it, and the fact that there isn't anybody existing in the factual space that looks like me or has my background is absolutely a reason to do it. And I literally took that ball by the horns and just went for it. And increasingly the films got better and better. I started out making pretty rubbish films, if I'm going to be honest. And the reason that the films that I made to begin with weren't great was because I wasn't fully aware of what was necessary to make the authentic film that I was trying to get to. You know, as time went on, I understood myself better, and I also understood the process better. Became a producer, and suddenly became much more involved in the kernel of the idea and the production of the idea. And as a result, some of the films that people continue to talk to me about on the streets, even to this day, nearly a decade later, they got made. So in the space of about 10 years, I made just over 40 documentaries, over 40, 50 hours of television.
Wow.
And I'm incredibly proud of the work because some of it was rubbish and it got better. It got better and it progressed as I progressed. And I, towards the end of making those films, felt as though the form didn't speak to the way that I wanted to tell stories anymore. I found it becoming increasingly limiting, which is why I started to really lean into my writing. And as a writer, you're able to craft stories as opposed to go out and find them. And that has led me now to becoming a writer-director and feeling more fulfilled in terms of the way I express myself creatively, and also the way in which I challenge the audience with ideas, be that through comedy or drama.
Yeah. So going back to before about you navigating different careers, it does sound like fulfillment is a big part of it too. Like you just feel like you're no longer fulfilled. It's time to move on. But again, going back to just the collective Diaspora, you've done over 40 hours of documentaries. What have you learned that binds us as, you know, as a race, as a people, and again, helps us to move forward?
Do you know what? We all want the same things. Wherever I go in the world, we all want the same things. We want to feed our families, we want to be healthy, and we want to be loved. And it sounds really idealistic and ridiculous, but South Africa, same thing. Russia, same thing. China, same thing. All over and all up and down the UK, same thing. Ghana, same thing. Nigeria, same. Wherever I've been to make a documentary, it has been the same thing. I think the thing that's different is the way in which people go about it based on culture. And what I am striving for is to not only embrace the culture that I'm from, which I do, and which I think defines the way in which I live my life massively, but also to be a part of a global culture that strives to understand each other. You know, I like this idea of being part of a progressive tribe, and I meet people from my tribe every now and again. And when I do, you know, it's like old family members. It's like, you know, you're made by this with the same stuff. And the minute that happens, something beautiful happens because you essentially have the same perspective and the same worldview. And when you are striving for those same things and you know that they are top of your agenda, the way that you navigate life, the way you treat people, even the way that you work shifts. So, you know, you've noticed it yourself, because I've said it several times in this conversation. Fulfillment is very high on my agenda. If I'm not fulfilled, I will move on. And that extends to every corner of my life. Friendships, romantic relationships, professional relationships. If it is not fulfilling, then I don't want to waste your time. And I definitely don't want to waste my own.
Do you feel like, though, there is a way to get the fulfillment in the current environment you're in? Like, do you try first before you move on? Or are you kind of like, no, I don't feel fulfilled, and then you move on?
Yeah, I think it comes down to knowing yourself and knowing what makes you feel fulfilled in that particular situation. As I've said, it always starts with self, and it starts inward, and it grows from there. That's how I attack everything in my life. And the only way that I can identify what works for me is if I know who I am. And a lot of that work has been done personally. I'm a massive advocate for therapy, because my life changed dramatically in every corner of my life when I started to actually evaluate who I am as a man and who I've become because of the things that have happened in my life. And in knowing who I am, everything in my life has blossomed and flourished because of that.
So again, it still sounds like, as part of this topic, again, for us all to progress, for us to move forward, we have to firstly know who we are. We have to know ourselves. We have to do that deep investigation, deep dive, therapy, whatever it takes for us to be able to then I guess, help the community. So for you, you were able to help by sharing stories in different corners around the world. Now being a writer, you know, you've got your film coming out, again, expressing that creativity. But how were you able to gain the trust to share stories? Because I guess here at BYP Network, we're here to amplify stories. We're here to show role models and get them on a platform to our community so people can see, as you said, you need to be able to see so that you can achieve, right? And this is what BYP is about. So how have you been able to gain trust from those people that you've been sharing their stories?
I think this pertains quite specifically to my documentary work, right? So as a writer, I've not taken anybody's life and recreated it. I've done things that are similar to that in a drama that I wrote called Make Me Famous, about the relationship between reality TV, young people, social media, and suicide. So I interviewed a lot of people that have come through reality TV and took elements of their stories as opposed to making a biography or biopic or something. And that was hugely helpful. To answer your question, in the documentary space specifically, it's all about trust. If you're able to appeal to somebody on a human level, then they're willing to open up. And also just being comfortable with being in the uncomfortable has been a huge thing. So to begin with, when I was making documentaries, I made the mistake of thinking it was important to be everybody's friend. So I would take every contributor, by that I mean the people on screen that I was interviewing, I would take everybody's email, I'd take their number, I'd try and keep in touch with them after, so they didn't feel as though I was this horrendous TV person that was just coming along to take their story and run away. But unfortunately, it is an exchange, and it became unhealthy for me when I started to feel the responsibility for the people that I was interviewing. So I'd be getting calls at 2 a.m. from people in Kenya asking for money because they couldn't feed their children that week, and that responsibility was never mine to begin with. But I made that the case. So it grew to me having a level of self-confidence on the first day of a shoot with anyone, saying to them, look, I'm going to do my best to get to know you. I'm going to do my best to tell your story as authentically as possible. But when this show ends, our relationship ends. Wow. And in saying that on the first day, you put people on the back foot a bit, but if they're remotely emotionally intelligent, they respect you for it. And quite quickly, you have a rapport that is greater than anybody else that they've been interviewed by, because they know that you're being authentic and they respect the perspective that you're coming at things from. Therefore, telling the most true story for me always starts with truth. And that is setting the boundaries in which the interaction is going to take place through. And beyond that, just being really honest and transparent about what your intentions are and what the limitations of those intentions actually are in the interaction.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Can those who are watching, if you have any questions, make sure you put it in the chat. Put it in both the event chat and the session chat so that I'll be able to see it. Again, one of my questions is just hearing your story. I hear confidence. I hear someone who knows themselves, who's been able to navigate so many fields. When talking to this audience, what advice can you give them about their own journey, how to kind of tackle their journey and to achieve a level of success, whether it's similar to yours or their own level of success?
I think recognizing what makes you an individual and doubling down on it is an instant quick fix to getting in front of the person that you're in competition with. We live in an assimilation culture, particularly as children of immigrants, where it's been fed down to us through no fault of our parents that the easiest way to get ahead is to assimilate. And the healthiest parents, without realizing it, do that. That might be them changing their accent a bit when they pick up the phone, or it might be not being their truest self when you bring your friends round. Those subtle nudges towards assimilation don't apply to our generation. I think the truth is, if you are doubling down on your uniqueness, particularly today, especially in this moment that we're in right now, people will embrace you for it. And also, you will instantly stand out from your quote unquote competition, if that's even a thing for you. I have only truly felt fulfilled and found success the minute in the moment, shall I say, in the moments where I recognize who I am and the moments where I celebrate where I'm from. I bumped into an old school teacher the other day, and she was telling me that she asked me, "Oh, do you remember that day you did that dance for us at school, Rich?" I was like, "Excuse me." She said we had like a show and tell. This is in my primary school. I must have been about 6 years old. She said we had a show and everybody came in bringing, you know, like their favorite toy or you know, something that their grandfather had in the war, and you came in with kente cloth and you spoke about the Ashanti tribe, and you spoke about Tree as a language, and you did a dance that you saw your grandmother do at a funeral. And she said, and I said, really? She said, yeah, you were 6 when you did that. Do you not remember? And I was like, no. And that again is one of the tools that my mother put in the tool belt very young, and that is to be you and be proud of you. And as a result, I think I am the most comfortable I've been in my own skin, and also progressing the fastest I've ever progressed.
Wow. And there are so many questions, but I just want to double down because I feel like we haven't really spoke about the support system. So you mentioned your mother quite a few times. At some point you mentioned a mentor. Just tell me a bit about the support system you've had in your life on this journey, and how others can build a support system.
Yeah, so not to play my tiny little violin, but I'm sure that I'm not the only person on this call who grew up without a father. My mother remarried when I was young, but I never had a great relationship with my stepdad. So I've always looked for mentors and father figures outside of the home. And fortunately, I've always known what the qualities of a decent human being actually are. So from a young age, mentorship has been incredibly helpful and beneficial to me. And that's not having somebody in business tell me the right way to navigate my career. That is the guy at Play Center helping me identify what a good friend looks like and what a bad one looks like. The first producer I worked with helping me recognize what hard workers get and what hard work actually looks like, and how to navigate being the only person of color on set. Having people around that are unique in their guidance has really helped for me. So mentorship has always been incredibly important, which is why I mentor people myself now.
Wow. So you heard that, everyone. Mentorship is important. Make sure you get a mentor, find a mentor, or even those around you that are just helping in any way is a form of mentorship. So be open to help. I'm going to ask one question from Sam Agabotsua. That's terrible on my part to not get the name right. You mentioned making rubbish films at the start. How do you push through that stage of feeling you don't know much or you're not doing the best as you progress? And how do you find the right help?
Taking all of the frustration of getting it wrong and investing that as energy into getting it right. As much as I hate making mistakes, I love making them, because it's a lesson that you can carry with you, and you can always look back on something and say, you know, I don't ever want to have that feeling again, that feeling of failure. But failure is imperative. We've all experienced it, and I use failure as fuel for success.
Yeah, it's amazing. We heard that from will.i.am the other day as well, about failure means fly, you know, like our society, our community are very afraid to fail, essentially, or we were told we're not allowed to fail. And most times we're not, because we might be the only Black person in the room, in the industry, wherever we're in. So feeling like we fail is like is a big weight on our shoulders, because it means the whole community fails in some people's eyes. So I guess how did you kind of not have that feeling of, if I fail, I'm representing the Black community, but actually I'm just Reggie Yates, and I know I'll now succeed?
Oh no, it's not that I didn't have that feeling. I did feel that, and at times I feel it now. But it's a voice that I have to silence, because you can feel a level of responsibility when you are a Black person in an industry where there aren't many. Thankfully now, there are so many more examples and so many more versions of success that it's not just the one or two different ways or examples that we have to look at. I'm really proud of the journey and the career that I've had, and that when I started, it was literally just me. But that isn't the case now. And, you know, I will claim a part of that change, because if you are young and want to make documentaries, you don't even have to look at me now. Particularly if you're young and Black, there are so many young Black filmmakers making documentaries, not just on traditional platforms, across streaming services, across social media, across YouTube. There are so many different versions and examples of what it looks like to be good at this thing. So that's the thing that I always wanted. I never wanted to be alone. I wanted to see so many more options and versions of success. You know, at this moment, success is sports and entertainment. If you're black, but you know, the minute we get a black Elon Musk, suddenly tech will become an option for the 12-year-old who thinks the only way that he can achieve and make mum proud is by, you know, trying to be Stormzy. Whereas there are so many other ways, and you know, we haven't got a visible financial success. You know, the minute that we have a black Warren Buffett, how incredible would that be for, you know, that next generation of people who want to invest and want to be in finance? I think increasingly there are more and more examples of what it takes to be successful, but also success in different industries. And that's the thing that I love. The minute that there are different versions of success in different industries, there is a blueprint laid and a path that people can follow to actually emulate. And if in a lot of ways, hopefully better and build upon.
You know, with that, we have to draw it to a close. But I mean, I completely agree. Again, this is why BYP Network is here, to show the community that there are successful people in different lanes and different fields, and that you just need to see them. You know, representation is key. Some people have to be trailblazers, and some people can see their role model and then be like their role model. But thank you so much, Reggie. That was incredible. Obviously, quickly shout out to your movie Pirates, which is out next month. Next month?
Yeah, November 26th. It's out very soon. Please
so make sure everybody support. He already has number 2 coming out anyway. So let's support this number 1. So thanks so much, Reggie. And thanks everyone for listening.
Nice one. Thank you for having me. Cheers, guys.